everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the football betting series here on YouTube Premier League edition. We did okay, but only okay last time around, and our November record stands at 4 wins, 2 losses and a push, for a total monthly profit of £22.72. When we add that to the previous month's data, our overall record stands at 43 wins, 14 losses with 5 pushes, and a total series profit of £494.73. We've got one more game week before another international break, and I have 3 picks in today's episode. If you think I'm talking some sense, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. And without further ado, let's get into it. First pick sees 7th place Chelsea hosting bottom of the table Wolverhampton, and Chelsea they managed to beat Spurs in their last match. A slightly out of form João Pedro managed to recapture some of his brilliance, with his single goal proving to be the difference between the two sides. However, despite the 1-0 win for Chelsea, the scoreline absolutely does not reflect how dominant they were in the match. When we take a look at the stats, we can see that Chelsea won out on every major win predictor statistic. They generated 15 shots, 6 big chances, and this all combined for 3.68 XG. When we take a look at their form, it's now 3 wins in the last 4 for Chelsea after what was a patchy run of form last month. They host a Wolves side who suffered yet again another defeat at the hands of Fulham. The deadlock was broken in just the 9th minute when Raul Jimenez played through Ryan Sessegnon, with the fullback finishing with ease. Harry Wilson then doubled the lead in the second half, and then the game was put beyond all doubt when substitute Jesse Mosquera's own goal gave Fulham a third in their 3-0 win. When we take a look at the numbers, we can see that Fulham more than deserved the 3 points, as Wolves combined for a pitiful 0.25 XG. In terms of form, it's now 3 losses on the bounce for Wolves and no win in 10 Premier League games to start the year. Therefore, it wasn't too much of a surprise when the Wolves board stepped in and sacked Vitor Pereira, and it looks like they're going to appoint Gary O'Neill in a back to 2023 kind of move. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last match between these sides took place in the EFL Cup around about 10 days ago. Despite it being an earlier round of the Cup, both sides did line up with what was a close to full-strength 11, and Chelsea wasted no time at all opening the scores as Andre Santos' strike after 5 minutes gave them the lead. And the Blues would find themselves 3-0 up at half-time as George and Esteban managed to get on the scoreboard, as Chelsea seemed that they were cruised to a comfortable win. However, Wolves really did take the game to Chelsea in the second half. Tolu scored in the second period, and in the 73rd minute, Wolves reduced the deficit to just 1 goal with plenty of time left to play. However, Gittins killed the game off for Chelsea in the 89th minute, so when Wolves scored his brace, it was a rather meaningless goal. 4-3 the final score to Chelsea as they proceed to the next round of the EFL Cup. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, that win for Chelsea means that they have won each of the last 3 encounters across all competitions. My prediction for today's game is that Wolves have been so incredibly poor this season, and in the last encounter they were really only allowed to score 3 goals because Chelsea effectively won the game in the first half and took their foot off the pedal. With the scores reset to 0-0 on Saturday, I'm pretty confident Chelsea will pull off a 4th consecutive win. Therefore, I'm going to back Chelsea for a full stake here in bet number 1. Our second selection sees 4th place Sunderland playing host to top of the table Arsenal, and Sunderland they were held to a point in their last match against Everton. The Toffees were the much better side in the first period, as evident by the numbers, and therefore it wouldn't shock anyone to know that they went into the break 1-0 ahead after Iliman Ndiaye's goal in the 15th minute. His curved shot came after a mazy run in what was a real individual effort for the Senegalese winger. However, the second period is where Sunderland came to the fore, and this started immediately right from kickoff. Granit Xhaka scored with the first attack of the half, his long-range effort deflecting past Jordan Pickford to find an equaliser, and this goal really set the tone for the second period. Sunderland took 10 shots in the second half, generating 0.82 XG, compared to a really poor Everton side who could only put together a pitiful 0.02 XG. However, despite the mounting pressure, the Black Cats weren't able to find that second goal, resulting in the 1-1 draw. When we take a look at Sunderland's record, we can see that they are unbeaten in the last 3 Premier League games, and they find themselves 4th place in the table after 10 games played. They host an Arsenal side who visited Burnley and brought all 3 points back to the capital. Gyökeres and then Rice scored in the first half to bring home the bacon in a really solid 2-0 win for Arteta's troops. Statistically, the game was quite as simple as I made it sound. Arsenal won out on every major win predictor and were good value for the 3 points. When we take a look at Arsenal's form, that win over Burnley means they've won each of the last 5 games in a row, and they're unbeaten in their last 7 Premier League encounters since their 1-0 loss to Liverpool. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between these sides came back in the EFL Cup all the way in December of 2021. Arsenal dominated the matchup with Nicolas Pepe and Charlie Pantino and a young Eddie Nketiah hat-trick, sealing a 5-1 win for the Gunners. However, for the last time these sides met in the Premier League, we need to go back even further to May of 2017. Arsenal once again won in convincing style by a 2-0 scoreline, with both goals coming from an in-form Alexis Sanchez. Longer term, Arsenal have won each of the last 3 encounters between these sides, and they're unbeaten in the last 12 matches across all competitions. My prediction for today's game is that both of these sides have been surprise packages for different reasons this season. Sunderland are punching massively above their weight, and they're set to be nowhere near the relegation battle come the end of the season. As for Arsenal, whilst I expected them to be around the top end of the table and challenging for the title, their 6-point gap they've opened up over second place is not just impressive, but puts them as the clear favourite for the title in my opinion. Although this match is away from home for the Gunners, I do think they will be able to exert the same amount of pressure and control against a Sunderland side who risk becoming too high on confidence and failing to recognise the danger during this matchup. For all those reasons, I'm going to back Arsenal to win for a full stake here in bet number 2. Our third and final matchup in today's episode is a mid-table clash, and it sees Brentford in 12th place playing host to 13th place Newcastle. Brentford, they played in a London derby against Crystal Palace in their last match, with Mateta opening the scoring after half an hour. Then the Eagles doubled their lead when Nathan Collins scored an own goal in the 2-0 loss for the Bees. Whilst Crystal Palace weren't hyper-creative, they did do enough to better a Brentford side who only generated 0.54 XG across the 90 minutes. In terms of form, that defeat for Brentford broke a brief 2-game winning streak. They've now won 2 and lost 2 of their last 4 Premier League games. They host a Newcastle side who disappointingly managed to show absolutely no fight in their last match against West Ham. Whilst Jacob Murphy got Newcastle off to a fast start, capitalising on the counter after Bowen hit the post, this effort was really the only good thing that Newcastle brought to the game, as West Ham actually turned up and showed their class. Despite surrendering around 2/3 of the possession, the Irons did manage to generate 1.75 XG from 15 shots across the match. They actually found themselves going into the half-time break ahead, thanks to Paqueta's goal and a disaster at the back for Newcastle, as Botman managed to intercept Aaron Wan-Bissaka's cross, but he did steal the ball past Nick Pope, so 2-1 was the score at half-time. And with a 2-1 deficit, you'd think that Newcastle would turn up for the second period and show a bit of fight, but this could not be further from the truth. They really didn't create anything from their 6 shots, which combined for just 0.28 XG, and West Ham managed to get a third late on to kill off the game. Thomas Soucek was first to a spilled ball from the goalkeeper, with the final scores being 3-1 to West Ham. In terms of form for Newcastle, it is quite mixed, 2 wins and 2 losses over their last 4 Premier League games. In fact, it's an identical record to their host in today's video. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between these sides took place back in April. Newcastle managed to pick up a 2-1 win at St James Park. It was a fairly evenly contested game according to the numbers, but when we have the context that Brentford's goal came from a Bryan Mbeumo penalty, we can really see that Newcastle created a much higher quality of chances than their visitors, and were good value for the win. That win for Newcastle made it back-to-back wins for the Toon over the Bees, and they've won 7 of their last 8 encounters across all competitions. My prediction for today's game is that whilst both sides come into this match on identical form, Newcastle have had the better head-to-head record recently, so choosing a side was tricky for me because whilst the stats indicate Newcastle, the last performance really didn't give me any hope. However, I do like goals for this one. Brentford have only seen over 2.5 goals in 1 of their last 4 matches in the Premier League. However, they've seen over 2.5 goals in 3 of the last 4 home games in the division. Whereas Newcastle, they've seen over 2.5 goals in 4 of their last 5 Premier League games and in both of their last 2 away fixtures. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, each of the last 3 encounters and 5 of the last 6 matchups have seen over 2.5 goals. Added to that, each of the last 3 matches at the G-Tech have seen over 2.5 goals scored. For all those reasons, I'm going to back over 2.5 goals for a full stake here in bet number 3. So there we have it, 3 picks in today's episode, starting off with Sunderland versus Arsenal. We're going to back the away side, odds of 1.42, a £50 full stake to return 21. Also, with the late kickoff on the Saturday, Chelsea-Wolves, we're going to be backing Chelsea to pick up the win at odds of 1.38, a £50 full stake to return 19. And then the single fixture on the Sunday, Brentford versus Newcastle, I'm taking over 2.5 goals at odds of 1.84, so a £50 full stake should return 42. So, across the weekend, we're going to be risking £150 to pick up hopefully as much as £82 exactly. Will we do so? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to tune into next episode. But if you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Don't forget to check out the continental picks in the pinned comment down below. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.